Hello and welcome. Here are ways to become a supporter of the channel. Thank you and enjoy.
3, 2.
Tell me you grew up poor without telling me you grew up poor.
Three of us were home with my older sister, and all we had was one egg, so she didn't cook it because it wouldn't be enough food for the three of us to eat. My mom worked for a grocery store, and one day the owner of the store was there and told me and my younger sister, you can have anything you want out of the entire store. So us being kids, we went and got toys, and we got home, we got in really big trouble because my dad said we should have gotten meat. My older sister used to hold me as a baby and pretend like I was her so we'd get more stipends from the lines for food. You know, I hear all this stuff about they're going to give everybody that has a child part of their child tax credit, and how they've been giving out food stamps for people with children. I don't have any children during the pandemic, and man, that is such a blessing. Like, that would have completely changed our lives. I think about how our lives would have been different now if we would have had that opportunity then. Please support it. Please give kids food, please.
Tell me you grew up poor without telling me you grew up poor.
Alright, here's the thing. I didn't know I was poor growing up poor. I thought it was the norm, but here goes. So growing up, my mama used to work on Sunday selling guaraches, the food. So I can tell you guys what it is. It's very delicious. If you guys want to know more, just ask. But my dad and I would go every Sunday too to, you know, walk around in the swap meet. But it kind of wasn't really walking around. My dad would point at cans and I would go collect them. I thought it was like a scavenger hunt, honestly. But I would actually go under tables when people were still eating to grab cans off of the floor, and sometimes dig to the garbage. After a while, I was kind of embarrassed, so I asked my papa if I could stop doing that. So we didn't stop because we needed the money, but then eventually I did, so.
Tell me you grew up poor without actually telling me. I'll go first. Hot dog bun, hamburger bun, cinnamon sugar toast, garlic bread.
Tell me you grew up poor without telling me you grew up poor. I'll go first.
If I remember the stories correctly, the first house I remember living in was a single wide. There was 10 head of youngins. I'm number 9. All the boys slept in the living room. I think big sister got her own room, and the little sister slept with mom and dad in their room. Left there, went to the old house, over 100-year-old house. Didn't have no central AC. All the boys slept in one room. You sweated your ass off in the summer. You froze your ass off in the winter if you didn't have enough blanket. There was one bathroom. Most of the time you could find dad on it when he was home. So you had to go shit in the outhouse. Most of the time breakfast was a slice of bread with a slice of cheese on it. Mom threw it in the microwave for 15 seconds. Poor? Hell yeah, we were poor. We didn't know it though. Had a roof over our head. Dad kept our bellies full. He'd gone 6 months out of the year, but he worked his ass off and was able to feed 10 head of youngins. So, but poor? Yeah, we're fucking poor. But I loved every minute of it.
Tell me you grew up poor without telling me you grew up poor.
I grew up in a house with no air conditioning in Texas. That meant learning how to survive 105-degree summers and really, really cold winters. I'm pretty sure my dad broke every single child labor law, because if I didn't work or if we didn't work, we wouldn't eat. I didn't have a cell phone up until college. No, I started college in 2014. We didn't get internet until 2012. I wore used clothes every single year to school, and people would make fun of me for it. But hey, I watched a lot of public television because we had no cable, so I watched a lot of Dragon Tales growing up. My parents, just to save any money, never fed us Taco Bell or McDonald's. So I never tried it up until I was in college. I didn't know these were struggles up until I started college.
Tell me you grew up poor without telling me you grew up poor.
My first grade teacher brought me a bag of clothes to wear the second week of school. I thought that was just a cool thing all teachers did. And I am forever thankful for how kind that teacher was.
Tell me you grew up poor without telling me you grew up poor. I'll go first. When I was a kid, I would have to go fishing, and if I didn't catch any fish, I didn't eat. Sometimes if we couldn't catch any fish, we would go looking for these little conchs, and we would clean them real good, boil them, and pick out the meat, and we'd mix it in like spaghetti sauce and stuff. Our toilet paper came from KFC, not their toilet paper, but their napkins. We never ordered food, really. We just took their napkins. Sliced bread was every bread. Hamburgers, hot dogs, everything. We never really had dessert. We couldn't afford dessert. The only time we had dessert was on somebody's birthday. In elementary school, I knew that when we didn't have any electricity, at sundown, we were screwed. We had to do everything by candlelight, so get everything done that you need to get done before sundown. Also, we use these kerosene lanterns. Way flammable. Too flammable for freaking small children to be running around and using and operating themselves. I knew how to flush a toilet at a very young age, like 6, 7 years old. It was pretty much when I was able to pick up the bucket of water that I would get from the neighbor's house to flush the toilet. Because if there's no running water, you could still flush your toilet with a big bucket of water. I still remember the smell of the house. It was like this real nasty, like stale smell from not having any electricity or water for days at a time, if not a week or two. Children raised children in our household because of my parents' work schedule and father's drug addiction. When I was 18, I tried to go get a phone in my name, and I couldn't because my parents had already used my social security number to get a phone when I was just a child. I learned how to cook on a grill at a very young age, and the stove, but when the stove wasn't working, I used the grill. What else? New toys and stuff that I would see on commercials. I didn't have any on my own, but I did get to play with them at my friends' houses when they got them. When we didn't have any electricity, me and my siblings would argue and fight and debate on who's the dirtiest and who gets the last hot shower, when most likely it was going to be my dad anyway after working. When I was a kid, at 11 years old it started, I would mow lawns throughout the summer just to make sure I had new school clothes and school supplies for when the new school year started. So, yeah, tell me you're poor without telling me you grew up poor.
Tell me you grew up poor without telling me you grew up poor. Dinner time.
Crash course on how to piss off the Polynesian nations. I just want to say, sir, that I feel personally attacked by this message. And although spam and eggs is a cheap meal, watch yourself. Because you got a whole bunch of tatted 300-pound motherfuckers that eat good on spam and eggs. And the entirety of Asia that invented martial arts. Don't you dare talk about our spam and eggs like that.
Tell me you grew up poor without telling me you grew up poor. I'll go first. Every house we lived in growing up had sulfur water. Turn your clothes yellow and it smelled like rotten eggs, and that's what we drank. The first car I remember my mom having was an orange Dawson. In the summertime, the duct tape on the holes in the seats would heat up and you'd get glue all over the back of your legs. One time we had to eat potatoes for a week straight because that's all we had, and I didn't eat another mashed potato for 11 years, but I like them now. I'm fine. Mom used to have to make big plates of cornbread and gravy for the dogs so they wouldn't starve. Now, don't get me wrong, we have good parents. They didn't drink or do drugs. They didn't even cuss around us, really. And they both had full-time jobs. Mom always kept the laundry done and us kids clean. There's a difference between growing up poor and being trashy. We were poor. The reason we missed a meal here or there was because Mom and Dad would not take food stamps. They refused. Now, there's some good things about growing up poor. It makes you humble and makes you appreciate everything you have. All 6 of us kids agree that we are better people because of it.
Tell me you grew up poor without telling me you grew up poor.
The first time I ever had cow's milk, I thought it was rotten. The first time I had milk was the first time I got a subsidized lunch at school, maybe first grade. I, took my milk back to the table and I thought it was disgusting. I thought it was gross. I thought it had gone bad. So I went home and I told my mom how weird it was that all the other kids thought it tasted perfectly fine. And that's when she broke it to me. She took me to the grocery store and we bought our 2% gallon of milk that we always bought. But when we got home, she showed me what she did. She took the previous gallon that we had just finished, she cleaned it out well, poured half of the new gallon into the old gallon, and then she filled both of them up the rest of the way with water and powdered milk. And powdered milk has a very distinctive flavor.
Tell me you grew up poor without telling me you grew up poor. I'll go first. My mom was a complete single parent to 3 kids, and she would sometimes take us to the movies. We'd go to the budget cinema, which was $1 on Tuesdays. She would make sure that we were wearing baseball caps before we left. We'd get there and she'd have us grab napkins, and then we'd go and sit down. When the previews would start, she would give us the look, which meant take off our baseball caps and line it with the napkins that we got from the lobby. And then she'd take out a large Ziploc baggie of popcorn from her really big purse, and she would fill our hats with popcorn. Then she would take out cans of soda from that same purse. I don't know how she fit it all in there. And she taught us to do the coughing crack, which basically means you cough and crack open your soda at the same time. That way your cough muffles the popping of the soda opening. So smart. I remember it being so fun to us, and it's pretty amazing to think that she only spent $4 for the day.
You grew up poor without telling me you grew up poor.
Okay, so when I was in elementary school, my mom used to send my siblings and I off to school. And we were instructed. She used to like sit down and tell us like seriously, finish all your food. Don't ever skip meals in school. For lunchtime, overeat. Overeat so much that you wait. You sit there and you wait till your classmates leave whatever they didn't used to eat. They used to put it in the middle of the table, and we knew we had to overeat so much so that when we came home, we probably weren't so full that we didn't want dinner, because there wasn't a guaranteed meal for us on most days. Salvation Army used to give my mom food and a lot of people, but she didn't always used to make it on time. So we were instructed to overeat and eat everything of our school lunches.
Tell me you grew up poor without telling me you grew up poor.
My dad, he would keep my sister pregnant so we can have milk to drink.
Tell me you grew up poor without telling me you grew up poor.
My dad used to tell me restaurants were for rich people. We never ate Sunday dinner. We'd stop at Town and Country and split a pack of Circle B weenies on the way home. I tried to buy a Coke from the school vending machines with a food stamp one time. For a long time, I thought everybody's clothes came from a rummage sale. Kids used to tell me I smelled like poor people, and I had no idea what they meant. We had an 84 Ford LTD we used to drive to church. One day we ran over a milk jug. It got hung under the back bumper. We drug it through the church parking lot. We had 3 TV channels, Channel 7, Channel 10, and if you turn the antenna just right, UPN 38.
Tell me you grew up poor without actually telling me.
You ever get excited for the new iPhones to drop? Not because you can afford the new iPhone, but because with the new one dropping, you can now afford the one that came out 7 years ago.
Tell me you grew up poor without telling me you grew up poor. I'll go first.
So I'll tell you, growing up, I did not know that you could go to a fast food restaurant if you were not from out of town. I thought that only fast food restaurants for people who were driving through who couldn't go home to make food. And so they were only for people that were from out of town. So one day a friend's dad was driving me home from school, and he went through the drive-thru at McDonald's, and I was extremely concerned because we obviously lived there. And he asked what I wanted, and I had no idea because we never went to McDonald's. I was probably 12 years old, and he ordered me some food, and I asked him, I said, "Are we okay to go through here?" And he asked why, and I said, "Well, I thought you could only go through here going out of town, or if you were from out of town." And he just kind of laughed. So that's when I found out that you could go there no matter what.
Tell me you grew up poor without telling me you grew up poor.
My mom bought salad dressing and put in a Miracle Whip jar because she thought she was slick. I ate mustard. We drank Kool-Aid. That was 1 packet of Kool-Aid to a half a cup of sugar to a gallon of water. It was just flavored water. We put plastic on the outside of our windows so we didn't have frost on the inside of our windows. We burned wood. We didn't always have hot water. We heated that on the stove, the wood stove. But we survived.
Tell me you grew up poor without telling me you grew up poor.
Viney sausages.
Tell me you grew up poor without telling me you grew up poor. I'll go first.
Kind of a different video for me, but here goes. So, my mom, as a treat, when I was a little kid, like elementary school, would sometimes take me to the McDonald's that had a play place, and she would get me a Happy Meal, and she would always say she wasn't hungry. And I didn't realize it was because we just really didn't have it. And then later on, I was a little bit older, and it was a real big treat. Sometimes we would go to like Wendy's or McDonald's as a family, and me and my sister were both allowed to choose 3 $1 value menu items. So you weren't going to get a drink if you were smart. You know, you got like a fry, a sandwich, and like a 4-piece nugget or something. But I know people had it a lot worse than I did, but that was one of my experiences growing up.
Tell me you grew up poor without telling me you grew up poor.
In the late 70s, when I was about 5 years old, I went with my dad to take a load of trash to the local dump. While we were there, my dad looked over, saw a bike that someone had thrown away. Broken down, really crappy, bad paint. It was very old and very used. He grabbed that bike, put it in the back of his truck, we took it home. I kind of forgot about it. And then one day, he presented it to me. My dad had taken that bike, sanded it down, taken it all apart, replaced the rims, replaced the tires, replaced the tubes, gone to the hardware store, got my favorite color of paint, which at the time was black and gold, and presented it to me as a new bike. I never knew for the longest time that that was the bike from the dump. That was my first bike, and I rode the shit out of that bike.
Tell me you grew up poor without telling me you grew up poor. I'll go first.
Sometimes we didn't have butter.
It's the best. Tell me you grew up poor without telling me you grew up poor. I'll go first.
So I didn't know I was poor until I was like a little bit older, but my mom was a single mom, and there were some days she just didn't want to cook, you know. And when I say like we were not on any assistance. My mom worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs. I've been working since I was 14 to help make ends meet. But we would eat at Shoney's sometimes once a week, which was like a huge deal for my sister and I because we didn't eat out. And I found out years later that we ate there because my mom could write a hot check. She knew the day that they would deposit the checks, let's say like on the 1st. So she knew she had all month to write hot checks, and she just had to have a payday, right, before they were going to cash all those checks. And she did that so we could, you know, eat something other than ham sandwich. Anyway, bye.
Tell me you grew up poor without actually telling me.
Mom, we out of milk for cereal. You better put some water in that shit. Okay. Mom, we are out of ham and bologna and everything. Okay. Eat a mayonnaise sandwich. Put some sugar on it. It'll taste good. You ever waited till you was 14 before you got your first name brand pair of shoes? You ever wore the same school clothes 3 years in a row? The only thing different was the pants because you was growing fast? Yep.
Tell me you grew up poor without actually telling me.
2 things. First thing, food stamps used to look like actual Monopoly money. Second thing, when you used it at the store, They didn't have food stamps to give you back in change, so you got back real money. So if you grew up poor, everyone had that relative that would send a child into the gas station to buy a 25-cent pack of gum just so we could get real money back as change, and 9 times out of 10, that money was used to buy cigarettes.
Tell me you grew up poor without telling me you grew up poor.
Oh, dang. Yep.
Tell me you grew up poor without actually telling me.
Every time I go grocery shopping, I still get anxiety that when I get to the front checkout, they're going to swipe my card and it's going to say insufficient funds, and I'm going to have to slowly put back every single item in my cart.
Tell me you grew up poor without actually telling me.
So, I don't like to talk about it, but I grew up pretty poor. And one of the highlights of me being a kid when I was poor is, like, for my birthday, I got to pick what flavor of top ramen we got to have for dinner that night. That was like the coolest shit.